Aloha and welcome to the video. I do have to apologize for my voice. I'm overcoming a little bit of an illness, so I apologize. It might sound a little bit weird. But in this video, I'm going to be working on two knuckle dusters. In Hawaiian, that'd be a lima mano. Now, in Hawaiian, the knuckle duster is not really used the same way that a traditional knuckle duster is used. Being blunt force, the Hawaiian version is really more just a blade held close to your hand. Now obviously, because it is wood, hardwood, that makes the main body, it still could be used for blunt force, especially once the teeth have broken, but its primary function would be for slashing style attack. So close range, a side weapon is how it would be used. But for these two pieces here, I'm using a couple of leftover pieces from some other larger pieces that I had made in previous videos. I picked them just because they were a darker koa, and I really liked the look of that darker koa. And then I drew my primary template on this first piece here, and then I'm going to be using these drill bits to cut out the majority of the material in the center. I don't actually need to draw the same template on the second one. I just matched the holes as to where those drill bits were going to go. And then when I remove that material, it'll remove it from the same relative location on both pieces. So it actually saves a lot of time and reduces the need to draw out and try to match dimensions on each one of them. Now they are going to be a little bit different. One of them is a little bit thicker, a little bit larger. So because they're going to be slightly different from each other, I decided to make them different. And what I mean by that is one of the pieces is going to have tiger shark teeth, the other one is going to have bull shark teeth, one is going to have a hand wrap, the other one is going to be more of a plain design. One thing though that immediately became noticeable as I was working on these pieces was the wood, the koa wood that I had grabbed for these was unbelievably hard. Now koa wood is a hardwood, and I've worked a lot with it, so I'm kind of familiar with it, and I'm used to how it feels. But man, were these two pieces, they just kicked my butt. I spent hours upon hours sanding, chiseling, grinding. It was insane. The amount of sanding discs that I went through on this piece exceeded pieces that I make that are significantly larger and more complex by a large amount. Just goes to show that things don't always work out exactly as you're expecting. My original design for these two pieces was that they were going to be a little bit more simplistic of a design. So the purpose of drilling out the holes, and I've done this before and it worked out really smooth, is I drilled out the holes, then using my chisels, cleaned them up to about 90%, then came back with either files or sanding paper and was able to then smooth everything out. Because it was so hard, I was having issues cutting it down with the chisel. I was having issues with the files, having issues with the sanding discs. So what I ended up getting is I have a tungsten carbide bit, a larger bit, and I'm using that to shape out the inner side along with a metal file. And I was finally able to shape it, or at least get it to shape so that I could start working on the outer edges of it. It was still a ton of work, and even on the outer edges, I ended up needing to get a brand new grinding disc for my angle grinder. You can see there it was burning the wood. So usually when you start burning wood with any type of sandpaper or something, you're doing one of a couple things. Either the grit has worn down, so it's no longer biting, and so it's just heating up, or you're spending too much time in one spot and it's heating up, or you're pressing too hard for that grit and it's heating up, and so when it heats up it can burn. It's not really the biggest deal at this point of time in the piece, but it does add a little bit of extra work later on because I'll need to sand down past where it was burnt. As I was shaping it though, I noticed a few sections that had some small cracks, but small cracks and a little bit of rot in some sections. So despite it being really hard, there were some sections that were ridiculously soft, and so the feeling that I got while sanding and shaping was like going from shaping foam to shaping rock, which made it just unbelievably challenging to keep all of the lines and everything straight. I think I used, by the end of sanding, somewhere around 40 or 50 sanding discs. What'll happen on sanding discs, and the sanding discs that I use, I like them, not because I'm a big fan of the brand per se, but the specific discs that I use, they have a nice bite to them, and they seem to last for a decent amount of time. But despite that, they still, after using a sanding disc or any sandpaper, the little grains that are on it start to wear off, fall off, and you're left with a smoother, softer and softer disc. And so if you try using the same piece of sandpaper for too long, sometimes you can think you're saving money by not wasting sanding paper, but you end up costing you more money just because of the amount of time. What you could have sanded in a very short period of time takes 2 or 3 or 4 times as long because you're trying to use every small inch of that sanding disc. So I've just learned over the years that it's a lot better for me just to throw away. As soon as I start to feel that sandpaper is losing its bite, its edge, I'll just rip it off and get another one, and it makes the whole experience a lot faster, a lot easier, and I'm able to keep my edges a lot better. But for this piece, for these 2 pieces specifically, I just had to go back and forth between my chisels, between sanding discs, between the metal files. I was starting to get irritated, to be honest. I usually highly enjoy the entire process. I like watching it take shape. I like watching everything come together. Turning from just a solid chunk of wood into something that's recognizable. But sometimes it just kicks you in the butt. And this was definitely one of those times. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun just to share that experience, just because that's the way that it is. Even when you enjoy what you're doing, there are times when it just drives you insane, and you just gotta keep going on it. Now, I finally did get it sanded down to a decent spot. So as of this point in time, after I'd put in the grooves, I'm beginning to sand with the 220 grit. The higher the number of the grit, the finer the sandpaper. Now, I haven't sanded. Once I finish sanding the entire piece to 220, at that point I will be prepping it to put the teeth in place. But you can see, man, like I was just losing my mind on some of these days. There's just so much sandpaper. So I'll probably end up, these are for a client, and I already quoted him a price for this. There's a good chance that I might end up just breaking even as a result of the sanding discs. But it is what it is, and I'm not too worried about it. That's not an issue that I want the client to worry about. That's just sometimes part of the deal. And so I'm on to this next step. I finished sanding the entire piece down to 220. Once I get the teeth in place, I'll sand it down to 320 and then do a final 320 grit sand. I'm putting in the teeth the same way that I do all of my pieces. So I'll be setting in the teeth in epoxy mixed with wood shavings. And then once the epoxy sets, I go back and I drill holes in the teeth and in the koa wood, and then I lash it all together. So the epoxy just helps with that process. It's not the primary securing mechanism. It's a mechanical hold with the lashing. I have tried to see how strong the epoxy is in the past, not for a client's piece, but just for personal pieces. And it does okay, but it doesn't hold nearly as well as the lashed pieces, which is kind of expected. Same thing for knife scales. If you glue knife scales and you don't put a pin in them, then that mechanical hold kind of causes it to not be as strong if you don't have it. So once I put in the teeth, I clean out the excess epoxy, I drilled the teeth, and then I'm using this nail to start each of the holes. And the reason why I do this is, especially on a piece like this where it has a strong taper, it's really easy for the bit to walk when you start to drill, especially if you don't have a drill press like me. And so pre-tapping in a small starter hole helps keep it nice and straight. And so it prevents the bit from walking on you. If I had a drill press, that'd probably be a lot easier, but you know, I don't. So just some simple techniques that can help in that. Now that I've sanded the piece finally down to 320 and I've got it ready, I can go ahead and oil it. I'm oiling it with the tongue oil. I like using tongue oil. There's lots of oils. I'm sure many of them are just as good. Tongue oil is just a personal favorite. I just like the way that it enhances the natural grain. It does darken the wood a little bit, but for these pieces here, it turned out perfect. But I loved all the characteristics in these two pieces. It wasn't really a heavy curl in the koa, like a lot of the work that you've seen me make, but there's a lot of figure, there's some spalting, there's a couple two-tones, so sections where you've got dark and light, really heavy shimmer on some of these. And so even though it doesn't have the same brilliance as some of the other pieces I've made, the darker koa mixed with all those different colorations ended up looking absolutely stunning. I love the way that worked out. So I let that sit for 24 hours, and then the next step here is going to be lashing in the teeth, and I do just a basic triangle lash. I use this method for most of my pieces. It is one of the many traditional lashes, but I like it because it's simple, and I think it looks really nice, and it's also fast. It's one of the easier lashing styles to implement. And then once I get both of these lashed completely on the teeth, I'm going to go ahead and do a hand wrap on one of the pieces. I'm not going to do a hand wrap on both. I don't want them to look too much alike one another. I do want them to look very different. And so having the hand wrap on one and not on the other assists in that. Also, one of the pieces, this piece specifically, the one that has a hand wrap, ended up having less of a palm swell just as a result of the koa. And so the hand wrap helps with grip, whereas the other one has a pretty decent palm swell, and so it doesn't really need any extra grip. You can hold on to it. So here are the finished pieces. Now unfortunately I won't be testing these pieces because I need to get them packaged up and shipped out, and I didn't want to risk breaking them and then I have to fix them and add more time to that. The client's in a little bit of a hurry for me to ship them out. But I love the way that they turned out. These turned out absolutely awesome. It's been quite a while since I've made some of these. One of my favorite styles. It's a little bit more of a pain to make, but they're just a simple style, and they just look awesome. Let me know in the comments below if you like them. Again, I won't be testing with them, but if I did, they're a slashing weapon. They're not really used for blunt force. And so you do slashing motions on the pieces. Maybe in the future I can make another set or another piece and I can use that for testing. Mahalo nui for everyone that tunes into my videos. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it. The next couple of videos I'm really excited for. I have some awesome projects coming up. And I will see you on the next one. Mahalo. Aloha.